Before streaming services ruled our nights, the 1970s gave us unforgettable made-for-TV movies that defied their budgets and captivated millions. These weren't just filler, they were cultural events. Today, we're diving into 15 more 1970s TV movies that became cult legends. These hidden gems didn't just survive, they haunted, healed, and held audiences long after the credits rolled. Primo Duel, 1971. Before Spielberg was a household name, he was a 25-year-old director who took the wheel on one of the most nerve-wracking TV thrillers ever broadcast. Duel is pure cinematic adrenaline, a deadly game of cat and mouse between an average commuter and a faceless trucker on an isolated desert highway. Dennis Weaver stars as David Mann, a traveling salesman whose mundane business trip turns into a waking nightmare. With barely a word exchanged, the film builds unbearable tension, transforming a dusty American highway into a psychological battlefield. The enemy? A rusty, hulking truck with no driver in sight, and a will to kill. Shot in just 13 days on a shoestring budget, Duel became a sensation. Spielberg's masterful use of camera angles, sound design, and relentless pacing turned this modest ABC TV movie into a defining moment in television history. Its success led directly to Spielberg's career explosion, including Jaws, Close Encounters, and beyond. What made Duel legendary wasn't just the thrills, it was how it weaponized simplicity. No monsters, no weapons, just one terrified man against an unstoppable mechanical predator. It tapped into primal fears, anonymity, helplessness, and isolation. The truck didn't need a face, it was a manifestation of modern anxiety. This wasn't just a movie, it was the birth of a new kind of storytelling on television, and it still haunts our highways. 2. Salem's Lot, 1979. In a decade overflowing with horror, Salem's Lot redefined what television could do with vampires. Adapted from Stephen King's novel and directed by Tobe Hooper, it didn't just raise the bar for TV horror, it turned the dial until it broke. The story is simple. Ben Mears, a writer returning to his hometown of Salems Lot, discovers an ancient vampire has moved into the local mansion, slowly turning the town into the undead. But the execution? Chilling? Premiering as a two-part CBS miniseries, Salem's Lot dared to be cinematic. The floating vampire boy scratching at a bedroom window? That image alone traumatized a generation. But what truly made it a cult legend was its eerie restraint. It didn't rely on gore. It built dread like bricks in a wall. James Mason's portrayal of the vampire's servant Straker added class and menace, while Reggie Nalder's Barlow, feral, silent, rat-like, was miles away from suave Draculas of the past. It was primal, terrifying, and unforgettable. Salem's Lot isn't just about vampires, it's about decay. A town rotting from within, blind to its own corruption. That subtle social commentary mirrored America's disillusionment at the end of the 70s. Decades later, Salem's Lot remains one of the most influential horror events ever broadcast on network TV. Proof that horror doesn't need R ratings or buckets of blood, just fear, atmosphere, and a story that sinks its teeth into your soul. 3. The Nightstalker, 1972. Before the X-Files and Supernatural, there was Carl Kolchak, a rumpled, relentless reporter chasing vampires in Las Vegas. The Nightstalker didn't just give television a new horror icon, it changed the rules. Darren McGavin plays Kolchak, a journalist investigating a series of murders the authorities are desperate to explain away. But Kolchak isn't fooled. What he finds is terrifying. The killer is a real vampire, and Kolchak is the only one willing to believe it. Aired on ABC and penned by genre legend Richard Matheson, The Nightstalker became the highest-rated TV movie at the time. It was smart, scary, and surprisingly funny, grounded in realism, but always one step into the supernatural. McGavin's Kolchak wasn't your typical hero. He was cranky, obsessive, and totally believable. He didn't carry a stake or wear leather. He carried a tape recorder, a camera, and a sense of moral duty. That made him revolutionary. The film's success led to a sequel and a short-lived series. But the original movie remains the blueprint, mixing noir, journalism, and supernatural horror with perfect balance. The Nightstalker wasn't just scary, it was subversive. It showed that monsters exist not just in shadows, but in the systems that deny them. And Carl Kolchak's refusal to look away made him the hero we didn't know we needed. Fourth Trilogy of Terror, 1975. What do you get when you blend anthology storytelling, psychological horror, and one fearless actress? You get Trilogy of Terror, an ABC television event that scarred audiences for life. Starring the brilliant Karen Black in 3 different roles, this anthology film is infamous for its final segment, Amelia, where a woman is hunted in her apartment by a possessed Zuni fetish doll. It sounds absurd. But when that doll grins, snarls, and charges across the room with a kitchen knife, it's pure nightmare fuel. Directed by Dan Curtis and written by Richard Matheson, the film uses horror not for shock value, but for psychological excavation. Each segment explores fractured identity, obsession, and feminine fear in different, unnerving ways. But it's Amelia that stole the spotlight and haunted living rooms for decades. What makes Trilogy of Terror a cult legend isn't just the horror, it's Karen Black. Her emotional range, her vulnerability, her descent into terror, it's a one-woman tour de force. She made even a killer doll seem terrifyingly real. The film was low budget, made quickly, and shot for TV. But that didn't stop it from influencing everything from Child's Play to Creepshow. And that final image, Black crouched, knife in hand, eyes possessed, is one of the most chilling conclusions in TV history. This was the kind of fear that didn't fade with age. It lingered. 5. Go Ask Alice, 1973. Few television movies hit with the emotional force of Go Ask Alice. Marketed as a cautionary tale, it became something more, a haunting portrait of youth lost to the chaos of the era. Adapted from a controversial book purported to be the real diary of a teenage girl, the film painted a raw, unflinching portrait of drug addiction, loneliness, and psychological unraveling. Jamie Smith Jackson plays the unnamed protagonist, a bright suburban girl who stumbles into the psychedelic counterculture. At first, her LSD trips are shown as liberating, colorful, and euphoric. But soon, things spiral. Addiction creeps in like a shadow, devouring her relationships, body, and mind. What begins as rebellion turns into survival. Then, desperation. Premiered at the height of America's war on drugs, Go Ask Alice terrified parents and teenagers alike. But what made it more than propaganda was its refusal to offer easy answers. It wasn't about the drugs, it was about the aching void inside a girl searching for connection in a world that didn't listen. The film's realism made it unforgettable. No magical redemption arc, no savior figure, just a harrowing descent into pain. It aired on ABC, but left an impact far greater than its network expected. It became a cultural flashpoint, used in classrooms, debated on talk shows, whispered about by teenagers. For many, Go Ask Alice was the first time TV spoke frankly about mental health, peer pressure, and identity. It was both a time capsule and a mirror, forcing viewers to reckon with the fragility of adolescence. And decades later, its raw voice still echoes. 6. Bad Ronald, 1974. What happens when love turns into delusion and protection turns into horror? Bad Ronald took that question and built an entire nightmare around it. Ronald Wilby is an awkward, misunderstood teenager who accidentally kills a neighborhood girl. Instead of turning him in, his overbearing mother hides him in a secret room within their house. But after she dies suddenly, Ronald is left alone. Inside the walls, watching, listening, waiting. When a new family moves in, they have no idea they're not alone. Scott Jacoby's performance as Ronald is haunting. He's not your typical villain. He's fragile, lost. But the longer he's hidden, the more twisted he becomes. What was once isolation turns into obsession. Innocence curdles into menace. The genius of Bad Ronald is its claustrophobic storytelling. It's not about jump scares, it's about slowly creeping dread. The idea that someone could be living behind your walls, watching your every move, became a generational fear. Premiering on ABC, the movie didn't rely on gore or spectacle. It relied on empathy turned inside out. You feel for Ronald, until you don't. Over time, Bad Ronald gained a cult following through late-night reruns and whispered playground legends. Viewers couldn't forget it. It lingered in the subconscious like a dream you can't shake. What makes it legendary isn't just the horror, it's the psychological questions it raises. How far will we go to protect our children? What happens when we can't face the consequences? And what monsters do we create when we hide them from the world? This was horror born from love and warped into something unforgettable. 7. Brian's Song, 1971. Not all cult legends are nightmares. Some break you in the gentlest, most devastating ways. Brian's Song is one of those rare films that left an entire nation in tears and made emotional vulnerability feel heroic. Based on the true story of Chicago Bears teammates Gale Sayers and Brian Piccolo, the film is a quiet masterpiece of friendship. James Caan plays Piccolo, the brash and funny fullback. Billy D. Williams is Sayers, the introverted running back. At first, they're rivals, then friends, then something deeper. When Piccolo is diagnosed with terminal cancer, the film doesn't drown in melodrama. It strips everything down to small moments: laughter, support, unspoken affection. There's no grand speech, no swelling orchestra, just love in its purest, simplest form. Premiered as an ABC Movie of the Week, Brian's Song shattered records and expectations. It became a cultural phenomenon, redefining what a TV movie could be. It was about sports, yes, but it was also about race, masculinity, and mortality in a way that was revolutionary for 1971. It didn't hammer you with messages. It just told the truth. The score, Michel Legrand's The Hands of Time, became a tear-stained anthem. And the final scene still ranks as one of the most emotionally affecting in TV history. Brian's Song was passed down like a rite of passage. Fathers showed it to sons. Coaches screened it for players. It wasn't just a movie. It was a touchstone. And decades later, it still teaches us that the bravest thing a man can do is cry for his friend. 8. The Quester Tapes, 1974. Before Data from Star Trek. The Next Generation, there was Quester, an android searching for his creator, his purpose, and, unexpectedly, his humanity. The Quester Tapes was Gene Roddenberry's ambitious follow-up to Star Trek, a TV movie that dared to ask, what does it mean to be human when you're built by humans? Robert Foxworth stars as Quester, a humanoid android who awakens incomplete. Something vital is missing, both technically and spiritually. He embarks on a journey across America, seeking the scientist who made him and the reason for his existence. Alongside him is a human companion, played by Mike Farrell, who becomes both guide and student. The movie is packed with Roddenberry's signature questions about conscience, emotion, and morality in artificial life. It's sci-fi with soul. Premiered on NBC, the film was intended as a pilot for a series that never happened. Network executives wanted more action, less philosophy. But audiences remembered Quester. Why? Because it wasn't about robots, it was about us. Foxworth's performance struck a delicate balance, mechanical precision with flickers of vulnerability. And the film's quiet moments, where Quester questions war, love, and death, feel more relevant now than ever in an age of AI and ethical computing. The Quester Tapes didn't just predict the future, it humanized it. It lives on as a cult favorite, proof that science fiction doesn't need explosions to be powerful. Sometimes the greatest journey is a question with no easy answer. 9. The Autobiography of Miss Jane Pitman, 1974. Some TV movies shake you with fear, others with sorrow, but few shake you with truth. The Autobiography of Miss Jane Pitman is one of those rare stories that pierces through time and speaks directly to the soul. Cicely Tyson's performance as Jane Pitman, an African-American woman who lives from the Civil War through the Civil Rights Movement, isn't just acting, it's embodiment. She ages nearly a century on screen, transforming from a young slave to a 110-year-old woman with a voice that still burns with dignity, defiance, and grace. Based on the novel by Ernest J. Gaines, this CBS TV movie aired during Black History Month in 1974 and immediately became a cultural event. But it's not a history lesson, it's a human epic. Through Jane's eyes, we witness Reconstruction, Jim Crow, and the slow, brutal crawl toward freedom. Each chapter of her life is a wound and a witness. Tyson's portrayal was so powerful, it earned her an Emmy and permanently redefined what television could do. Her aging makeup alone was groundbreaking, but the real transformation came in her voice, timid in youth, thunderous in old age. What made Miss Jane Pitman a cult legend wasn't just its production or politics. It was its emotional honesty. It made history feel personal. It dared to suggest that one woman's story could carry the weight of an entire nation's trauma and hope. And when Jane, in her final act, walks through jeering crowds to take a drink from a whites-only fountain, it wasn't just a fictional moment. It was television history. This wasn't just a movie. It was a reckoning. 10 Gargoyles, 1972. Before CGI monsters ruled the screen, there was one TV movie that made millions believe in demons hiding beneath the earth. Gargoyles was low-budget, fast-paced, and terrifying in a way no one saw coming. Premiering on CBS in 1972, this film follows anthropologist Dr. Mercer Boley and his daughter as they investigate strange happenings in the New Mexico desert. What they discover isn't just legend. It's a living nightmare. Gargoyles, ancient creatures that have slept for centuries, are awakening, and they want their place in the world back. At first glance, it's a standard creature feature, but what elevated Gargoyles to cult status was its tone. It took its monsters seriously. No camp, no winks, just eerie mythology, intense action, and a surprisingly philosophical take on evolution. The monster designs, created by a young Stan Winston in his first major makeup job, were revolutionary. These weren't men in rubber suits, they were believable, menacing beings. The lead gargoyle, voiced with an unnerving sense of superiority, isn't just a brute. He's a prophet of an ancient world. Audiences were stunned. This was a TV movie? It looked better than some theatrical releases, and more than that, it made you question, what if these creatures really did sleep beneath our feet, waiting? Gargoyles became a late-night staple, burned into the memories of kids who stayed up too late. It was proof that imagination, passion, and practical effects could overcome any budget. And if you've ever stared into the dark corners of a cathedral, wondering if something's watching, this movie's why. 11. Don't Be Afraid of the Dark, 1973. Few titles are as misleading and as chilling as Don't Be Afraid of the Dark. Because by the end of this film, the dark is all you'll fear. Premiering on ABC in 1973, this made-for-TV horror film follows Sally Farnham, a young woman who inherits an old Victorian mansion. Behind a bricked-up fireplace, she unknowingly releases small demonic creatures that begin stalking her with whispers, shadows, and psychological torment. What makes this film terrifying isn't what you see, but what you hear. The creatures don't attack with claws or fire. They creep, they whisper, they manipulate. "Sally!" they coo from the darkness. And as her husband and friends dismiss her fears, Sally becomes increasingly isolated, making the horror all the more suffocating. Directed by John Newland, the film doesn't rely on gore or special effects. Instead, it turns the domestic into the demonic. The safe space of a home becomes a prison, the fireplace, a portal, the whispers, a curse. It aired during the height of America's occult horror boom, alongside The Exorcist and Rosemary's Baby. Yet it did something they didn't. It made evil feel like it could live under your floorboards. It tapped into childhood fears of what lurks under the bed and twisted them for adult audiences. Over the years, Don't Be Afraid of the Dark became a cult classic, passed around on VHS, whispered about in horror forums. Guillermo del Toro cited it as one of his early inspirations and even remade it in 2010. But nothing beats the original's quiet terror, because once you've heard those whispers, you never sleep the same again. 12. The California Kid, 1974. In the age of anti-heroes and burning rubber, The California Kid roared onto screens with a vengeance. This wasn't just a car movie, it was a morality tale coated in chrome and dust. Martin Sheen stars as Michael McCord, a hot rod driver who rolls into a sleepy desert town to investigate the death of his brother. But this isn't just any fatal accident. It's murder, orchestrated by a sadistic sheriff who uses the winding mountain roads to run speeders off cliffs. His car, a patrol cruiser, his badge, a license to kill. What unfolds is a hybrid of revenge thriller and outlaw folklore. McCord, clad in black and riding a chopped Mercury coupe, doesn't just drive, he prowls. And his showdown with the sheriff becomes a metaphor for justice in a lawless land. Premiering on ABC, The California Kid captured the spirit of a restless America. Post-Watergate, post-Vietnam, trust in authority had eroded. And here was a film that didn't just question the system, it crushed it with a V8 engine. The action scenes are visceral and intimate, made even more thrilling by the lack of CGI. The cars really skid, the tires really smoke, and the danger feels real. But beneath the roar is a quiet commentary on power, corruption, and the lengths a man will go for truth. The California Kid became a cult favorite not just for its car chases, but for its soul. It gave us a hero who didn't need superpowers, just a steering wheel, a cause, and the guts to hit the gas. 13. A Cold Night's Death, 1973. Isolation, silence, madness. A Cold Night's Death takes all three and builds a horror story that freezes your nerves while it unravels your mind. Broadcast on ABC in 1973, this minimalist psychological thriller stars Robert Culp and Eli Wallach as two scientists sent to a remote Arctic research station after the sudden death of a colleague. Their mission is to study primates in extreme temperatures, but what they uncover is far more disturbing. Something or someone is in the station with them, and it's growing hostile. There are no monsters in sight, no ghosts, no demons, just dread. Palpable, creeping dread that grows heavier with every icy breath. The cold becomes a character in itself, inhospitable, relentless, and maddening. What makes A Cold Night's Death so effective is its restraint. With only two main characters and a single location, it crafts an atmosphere of unbearable tension. The walls seem to close in, the radio static becomes sinister, the sound of a door creaking, terrifying. As paranoia sets in, so do the questions. Is it sabotage, madness, an unseen force? The movie never gives easy answers, forcing the viewer to sit with the same discomfort as the characters. This isn't horror you scream through, it's horror you endure. And when the final twist comes, it doesn't shock you. It confirms your deepest suspicion, that we're not meant to be alone. Not in the cold, not in the dark. A Cold Night's Death didn't need special effects to haunt you, just good acting, smart writing, and an Arctic chill that never quite leaves your bones. 14. The Night Strangler, 1973. Lightning doesn't strike twice, unless you're Carl Kolchak. After the roaring success of The Nightstalker, Darren McGavin returned in The Night Strangler, proving that supernatural journalism was more than just a one-time scare. It was a blueprint for cult television. This time, Kolchak finds himself in rainy Seattle, drawn into a string of murders where the victims, always women, are found with crushed necks and missing blood. As the body count rises, Kolchak uncovers something even more terrifying. The killer is an immortal alchemist, hiding underground and feeding on human essence to maintain eternal life. Premiering on ABC in January 1973, The Night Strangler retained everything fans loved from the original: Kolchak's trench coat, his sardonic wit, his refusal to give up, and layered it with richer mythology, a creepier setting, and a more emotionally complex villain. Seattle's underground city provided a perfect setting: shadowy, historical, forgotten by time, a place where monsters could hide in plain sight. The movie deepened the Kolchak character too. He's not just chasing stories anymore, he's chasing justice, truth, purpose, even if no one believes him. Written again by Richard Matheson and directed by Dan Curtis, the film blurred the line between horror and noir. It wasn't just about the supernatural, it was about systems that refused to see the truth, and the one man crazy enough to keep looking. The Night Strangler became a cult favorite thanks to its eerie tone and the charisma of McGavin's performance. It paved the way for a short-lived series and eventually inspired a generation of TV creators. Long before Mulder believed, Kolchak was already chasing monsters in the shadows. 15. The Strange Possession of Mrs. Oliver, 1977. Karen Black was no stranger to the bizarre, but in The Strange Possession of Mrs. Oliver, she dove headfirst into a supernatural mystery that blurred the line between identity, trauma, and reincarnation. Premiering on NBC in 1977, the film follows Helen Oliver, a meek, subdued housewife, stifled by her controlling husband. One day, seemingly on a whim, she transforms herself. New clothes, new hair, a secret apartment. But what begins as a rebellion soon spirals into something terrifying. She starts having visions, dreams of another woman, fiery, confident, and violently murdered. Helen soon realizes she might not be imagining this new persona. She might be becoming her. Black's performance is mesmerizing. As Helen descends into madness or possession, the audience is pulled into her fragmented psyche. Is she channeling a dead woman's spirit, or is she cracking under the weight of repression? Director Gordon Hessler weaves psychological horror with feminist undertones. This wasn't just a ghost story, it was a cry against erasure. Helen's transformation becomes symbolic of every woman told to be quiet, to shrink, to conform. The movie's ambiguity is its strength. It never hands you a clear explanation. Instead, it leaves you questioning. What if our identities aren't fixed? What if we inherit more than just memories? Though underseen in its time, The Strange Possession of Mrs. Oliver developed a cult following for its dreamlike tone and its refusal to be easily categorized. It's horror, yes, but also tragedy and rebirth. And once you've seen Karen Black laugh through lipstick-stained teeth, possessed by rage and memory, you never forget her. These 15 TV movies proved that small screens could deliver colossal impact. They terrified, enlightened, and lingered long after airing. Which one haunted you the most? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more forgotten legends that deserve to be remembered. Until next time, stay curious.